When I was growing up, I had a neighborhood that had 3 police officers, so I was very interested in what they did for a living. When I was about 22, I actually went to work for LAPD, but only for 6 weeks. They said I was too naive. So I went back to my prior career, which was installing truck scales. The ones you see on the highway where the trucks pull in and weigh, and the highway patrolman there, I was showing them how to work everything. And they said, hey, I told them my story about LAPD, and they said, well, we're hiring. Why don't you apply for our job? And I did, and I got the job. Started there in August of '65. And just at the end of our training, they decided there were riots in South Los Angeles, and that they decided that a bunch of us should go there. And that's where I went. I went to South LA and learned a lot in just a little bit of time. So I spent 10 years with the Highway Patrol as a patrolman. I didn't have the church influence back then, and so I spent a lot of time at night. I liked working nights because that's when all the action was. But I had little kids at home, and it didn't occur to me at my young age that I needed to be home with them more. I wrote tickets till the cows came home. Matter of fact, they used to weigh my tickets. I wrote so many that they had a little scale there, and the sergeant would come out and he'd weigh my tickets. You get to help quite a few people. I used to carry all kinds of things to help people out on the road because people break down. Back then, the cars weren't made as well as they are now, and so people broke down with a lot of radiator heat, overheating problems. And so I carried extra gasoline, extra water, and some really good tape that would tape up a water hose or something. And people want to fight because I wasn't very big, 5'10", about 170 pounds, and they want to fight. Lost my front teeth. So I did that for 10 years with the Highway Patrol. I had gone through a divorce and needed to move on. We investigated Medicaid fraud. And so I investigated doctors and the recipients of Medicaid. I did that for 15 years. My brother and I went on to a Family Feud show. So anyway, he asked me what I did for a living, and I said, well, I was a fraud investigator. He said, oh, well, what kind of fraud do you investigate? I said, I investigate Medicaid fraud. And he said, oh, is there some fraud in the Medicaid program? And I said, you wouldn't believe how much fraud there is. And I used to get calls from the senators from Washington, D.C. for years because they would show that show, Family Feud, all over the country for years afterwards. So then after I left there, I went to work for the Department of Corrections as a parole agent. I supervised convicts when they came out of prison. That was the hardest I ever worked. My mom's name was Brigida, and my dad's name was Pietro, but we called him, we called him Dad, but everybody called him Pete. My mom and dad came here from Sicily, so she decided that we should come to California. By that time, they had 2 children, but they had lost both of those 2. My dad never learned to read or write or speak English. My mom did all that. We all sat together at dinner time and had dinner, and if I did anything or said anything, I always sat next to my dad, and if I did something or said something wrong, he would reach across and pinch me hard. So I learned a lot from my dad in that regard. My mom ruled the roost, and she spoke perfect English. I mean, we were Catholics. The whole family's Catholic. My brother did become a priest, a Jesuit priest, passed away for COVID a couple of years ago. But they just taught me right from wrong and work. By the time I had a job by the time I was 10. I used to sell newspapers in front of a supermarket. But as soon as I got paid, Mom was there. She'd pick up the check. My mom lived to be 102. My dad died shortly after leaving Goodyear. He worked in the rubber plant for 33 years. And the guy that was teaching me how to work on these amplifiers was an Assembly of God minister. So one day we were going to lunch. We were going to go to the truck where we were working, have lunch, and he said, would you like to read the Bible with me? Well, I'd never read the Bible. He taught me out of the New Testament, and we would read at lunchtime, and I was hooked. I went to I got baptized in the Assembly of God Church. I got baptized in the Foursquare Church, Foursquare Gospel. I got baptized in the Baptist Church, and they didn't satisfy my needs because she had children, I had children, and we needed a place to stay. We moved into this neighborhood. Next to an LDS family. They said, would you like to have the missionaries come over? They had these little movies. They would had a little one scene at a time, and they were teaching me. It was usually after dinner, and I was tired, and so they would turn off the lights and show the little film strip. Well, as soon as they turned off the lights, I fell asleep and would hit the wall. And it would go boom. Well, they turned off the machine and said, "Did you hear that?" And I said, I didn't hear anything. And so they would turn on the machine again, and this went on. They never did know where that noise was coming from. Take the time to search the scriptures. Learn absolute truth. When you have absolute truth, you're way ahead of everybody else. You got nothing to worry about. Follow the prophets, follow the apostles, follow all the leaders, and then if you're good at it, you'll have a generous outpouring of the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit doesn't hang around with people who aren't serious. I'm firm in my faith, and I expect everybody to be like that. That's probably the problem. That's one of my problems. And he asks us to love him, love his son, and to do for others. So my life is about doing for others. I work in the temple, been working since 2006 as an ordinance worker. I work at the Happy Factory. We make wooden toys that go all over the world. And I deliver Meals on Wheels on Friday. Where can you go in this world, in the entire world, and hear the quality of spiritual thought that we get from General Conference, in the Leahona, other broadcasts? I believe that I will be with my eternal family. I'm looking forward to meeting especially my parents again, because my dad never learned to speak very good English, so we never had a conversation. I'm looking forward to having that kind of a conversation with my dad. Well, I'm big on pasta and pizza, especially Italian sausage, meatballs, Romano cheese, which is really strong, provolone cheese. Yeah, right here. As a matter of fact, I'm not much for leaving the house. I'm not much for leaving home. I like gardening. I always grow a lot of tomatoes, and Linda makes salsa. And I like to go to the movie theater and see the big screen and eat a lot of popcorn. Books, well, I'm big on Bruce R. McConkie. The books that, biographies from like Thomas S. Monson, and one of my favorites is Ezra Taft Benson and Spencer W. Kimball, because that's when I joined the church. The natural man is an enemy of God. I know that sounds, people have others, but you need to remember that every day. Abide with me 'tis eventide.